Hi everybody. Thank you Rabbi Mendy and Rabbi Malka for allowing me to speak. My name is Ephraim Bergman, although I'm better known as Zeta Fred, as you can see from my cap. I am part of the Beit Rafael family of volunteers. When I was making this video, it was my father's yurtzeit, Alav Shalom, and I thought what a better way to elevate my father's neshama was to talk about the charity that I am part of. Beit Rafael began February 2012, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about the chesed work that it does in the community. As I said, it was established in February 2012 to provide accommodation, crisis accommodation, for families whose child is receiving treatment at the Royal Children's Hospital. From then, it's a fact that when someone is hospitalised, their greatest support and comfort is the presence of having their family around them. This is especially true for children. So the apartment from the opening day was utilised immediately, and even 8.5 years later, it is still the most frequently used apartment. We also have apartments at Cabrini in Melbourne, Monash Medical Centre in Clayton, and the Alfred Hospital. All of these apartments, each apartment is available to any member of our community for whatever time frame they may need. It is fully furnished. It has tallis, tefillin, non-perishable foods, frozen foods, cold drinks, nashes, chocolates, chips, anything you can need. The apartment is set up so a family can simply move in and be there for their loved ones, coming to terms with their condition without needing to fret about travelling back and forth from home to bring things and where to stay and when to rest. It is just right across the road. It's important for a family to be able to get out of the hospital and just clear their head. They can then go across the road, they can sit there quietly, they can have a cup of tea, they can sleep, and this is what the apartment allows for. How long can they stay in the apartments? There is no set time. They can say 24 hours, a few days, a few weeks. We've even had a situation where a family have stayed there for 5 months because their child was long-term patient at the Children's. So you can really see it becomes a home away from home. We try to keep in touch with the patients when they're there and see if they need anything, or even just to talk. Sometimes they just need a shoulder to talk on. Everything we do is confidential. We're just a sounding board, if you will, for the patient's family. The privacy is utmost important, and families are made aware that any conversation is strictly confidential. Another part of Beit Rafael is the medical shuttles. We have currently now got two new shuttles, which makes it 4. Unfortunately, with COVID-19, we're not in a position to be able to do anything, but we have 4 shuttles ready, waiting to take patients from wherever they live, maybe Clayton, wherever, to their medical appointments. We do approximately 300, 350 lifts per month. An example of a lift would be that a patient had an appointment with a specialist that week and needed to be seen, but the specialist couldn't see him in his rooms at the Cabrini or Alpha, wherever it is, but could see her or him at his rooms in Mornington. So a volunteer took her or him, I can't remember whether it was a he or she, took them to Mornington, waited, and took her home again. This is what we do. Now the volunteers all have working with children's checks, police checks, sign a confidentiality agreement, obviously have a driver's license. I can tell you the patients feel comfortable knowing that they have a driver, a Jewish driver. They don't have to fret that a taxi will arrive or not. And, you know, on a trip between Caulfield and the Royal Melbourne, lots of talk can happen and lots of laughs. Another initiative is the Shabbat box. Now, I'm sure any of you who have been in hospital Erev Shabbos will know about the Shabbat box. We deliver the Shabbat box Erev Shabbos, Erev Yontif. We typically do about 100, 120 per week, each week. In the Shabbat box, there's 2 electric candles, can't use normal candles, 2 challah rolls, salt, kiddush cup, grape juice, besamin, cake and chocolates. Look, when you take a Shabbat box to a patient, it does just as much nachas, gives just as much nachas to the volunteer as it does the patients, because we see the smile on their face when they receive the Shabbat box. They can be alone. They may have not had visitors all week, and the Shabbat box just puts a smile on their face. It's marvellous. Again, any volunteers, well, you need working with children, police check, and a confidentiality agreement needs to be signed. You don't need a license if you haven't got one, because we generally share 2 or 3 will go together to the hospital. As far as the Shabbat box, you can give 2 hours a week, maybe 3 depending where you're going, but 2 hours is basically all you need. With the shuttles, you can volunteer as little or as much time as you like. You could, well, let me put it this way, you could do one lift, which might be 2 hours. You could do all day. You could go to Mornington and back. You could go to, we've gone to Heidelberg, the Austin Hospital. You put in whatever time you want. Another initiative is we have instigated Erev Shabbos Tefillas. The rabbis and chazans of Melbourne have donated their time to put down some various neginim and tefillas, ending with Lechad Dodi. It has a similar effect as the Shabbat box. It puts a smile on people's faces. We currently do it at the Alfred, Cabrini, let me think, Caulfield, Epworth, Peter Mac, Royal Melbourne, Royal Children's, and we've just started at Jewish Care in Gary Smorgon. Yep, I can't think of any others at the moment, but it's growing, it's growing. The kosher pantry at Cabrini, we have in the emergency department a kosher pantry. It is a cabinet which has got lots of treats. It's got a fridge in it as well. It's obviously locked. You need to know the combination, but it's pretty obvious when you go there. And we keep stocking it all the time. Cold drinks, everything kosher that you need. Because when you go to hospital in a hurry, especially to the emergency, you take your phone, you take your keys, you take your credit card, but you don't think about anything else. You don't think about food. And so it's there, and it's fantastic. You can have a nush if you need be. You could be there for 10 hours in the emergency, and it makes a difference. Hopefully, shortly, we'll be able to do the same thing at the Children's and the Alfred. Well, the final thing is we try to provide initiatives for patients, families who face issues of ill health. Hopefully, this gives an outline of some of those. Of course, Beit Rafael is continuing to grow, but to do this, we require volunteers, particularly for the drivers. Should you be interested in assisting this chesed organisation, please, we'd love to hear from you. It's beitrafael.org.au. I'm sorry I haven't got the phone number with me, but it's easy to find. Finally, for those that know Shimon, I'm happy to say Shimon is well after his illness. He is completely clear. He is raring to go. He's got many good ideas coming forward, and would like you to help him. So if you are available, please offer to put in some time. I wish everybody to stay safe, have a good Shabbos, and enjoy a restful weekend. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Peter Bloom. In these times of isolation due to the pandemic, I have been very busy making sourdough bread. My wife dobbed me into Mendy and asked me to make a video, so I hope you will enjoy it. Please read at the bottom of it for some of the tips on the method. It takes a bit of patience, but once you get it right, you just keep repeating it. In fact, it's as good as the bread that people line up for outside the bakery in Hawthorne Road. Thanks and enjoy. So I have a few flours here. This is a buckwheat flour. Then I have rye flour, and this is just a container which I've put in white baker's flour. So I've now added caraway seed and kibble. I don't really weigh it, I just toss it in. And then I'm now going to add the water. So here's the bread after running it in the machine for a few minutes. Now I cover that up with cling wrap and I'll leave it for at least an hour, waiting, and it starts a reaction called autolyse, where it's letting the gluten start. As you can see, the starter has risen. And if you're looking here, you can see all the bubbles. And it's got quite a sourdough smell, and see all the bubbles on the side. As you can see, it's now well mixed. All the yeast is incorporated. And I'm now going to stop. So we now have the bread after 30 minutes. And as you can see, it's risen a little bit, but what I'm going to do is pull it, stretch it, and fold it, and that will elongate the gluten within the bread. I'm using water on my hands so it doesn't stick to my hands, and then I'm lifting it and I'm folding it, and then I lay it back down and I just rotate it, do it 4 different directions. You do it every 30 minutes, and then the last stage you'll find it's forming its circle quite well, and then you'll leave it to rise for 2 hours. I have now done the folding and stretching and folding about 4 times. I now will leave it to try and rise about 50%. I've now put the dough out onto a silicone mat that's lightly floured. I then stretch it in the length, and then I grab the top 2 corners and stretch them apart, and then I grab and fold them over each other, and then I grab the bottom 2 and do the same and fold them back. Then I pull the length and then start folding it on itself, trying to stretch it and force it in. Do not push too hard or you will knock the air out of the dough that's been risen. Once you've formed the final shape, you want to let it sit for 30 minutes, covered in some plastic, and this will help let the seams of the dough join and seal. And then I transfer it to my floured banneton, and then I wrap it up and put it into the fridge. The next morning, I bring it out of the fridge, and as you can see, I've cut the surface, scored it. This is a bit like an expansion joint in a building, and this is the weakest link. So when the bread starts to rise in the oven, this is the part that will come apart and it won't burst at the other edges. I bake it initially at the maximum temperature in the oven with the lid on the Dutch oven for 40 minutes. I then take the lid off and put it into a cooler oven and let it cook for another 10 to 15 minutes, where it's just making sure it's all cured through.
In this week's Parsha Teitzei, we see that there are only 2 mitzvot in the Torah that promise a long life to those who really abide by them. Kibud Avavayim, honouring one's parents, and Shluach Hakan, sending off the mother bird before taking her fledglings. When we look deeper at these 2 mitzvot, we learn that they're intrinsically related. This could be because they both acknowledge Mesiras Nefesh, which is self-sacrifice. We honour our parents who have sacrificed their time, energy, wealth, hearts and soul for the love of their children. Similarly, we see self-sacrifice in the mitzvah of sending away the mother bird. A mother bird would not fly from the nest, even if it puts her life or freedom in jeopardy, as she wouldn't want to risk that of her babies. We're prohibited from capturing the bird as it takes advantage of Metziras Nefesh, self-sacrifice, of her maternal instinct to protect her fledglings. By sending away the mother first, it shows the self-sacrifice, just as we honour our parents. Good Shabbos.
The yard sites for the upcoming week: Isaac Feldman for your brother, Sam Lieblich for your uncle, Grace Moskovic for your mother, Shirley Glantz for the Rybkovsky family, Benton Siegel for your mother, and Ashley Stanton for your mother. Wish you all long life. The birthdays for the upcoming week: Jewish birthdays: Warren Bafsky, Honita Beckenstein, Ruth Bendel, Michelle Blutman, Jared Chait, Ella Etzion, Steffi Getroy, David Kestenberg, Jade Kestenberg, Eitan Levy, Tamara Miller, Linda Rose, Michael Snyder, and Michal Tzabari. Wish you all a very happy Jewish birthday. This week's Parsha has actually 74 mitzvot. It's the Parsha that comprises more mitzvah than any other Parsha. So we can spend 74 weeks on this week's Parsha. However, today I will just focus on one of them. Quite an interesting one. One of the mitzvahs of this week's Parsha is that one may not yoke an ox and a donkey together to plow a field. There are many reasons given for this. I will share with you one of them. The Sefer HaChinuch, 12th century sage, says that to yoke an ox and donkey together, to work closely together for long periods of time, and to plow a field is unfair to both. They have different natures, characteristics, and tendencies, and it is painful and uncomfortable for them to work together. It's simply not fair. Generally, animals tend to stay in their own group and not come in close proximity to other species. It is even more painful for them to labor together with other species. And this is a very important lesson when grouping people together that have varying differences intellectually and even physically, because they have a heightened sensitivity to each other. Two people with opposite tendencies should not be charged for a common task. Now, the Chinuch is telling us a very important lesson for our times. In our society, with a very heightened sensitivity for multiculturalism and a blessed education against xenophobia, we sometimes take it to an extreme. We feel that we must force everybody to be close to everybody. And if not, we feel guilty. But that is not true. That is not the right way. We must respect everybody and value everybody, but at the same time understand that we have differences, and these differences must be respected, and we must be sensitive to these differences, which means that not necessarily are we capable of working closely with every single person or spending large amount of times with every single person. Our natures may be different, and it could be very burdensome to yoke ourselves together with other people. It could actually be disrespectful to both. We must make peace and respect our nature as well as somebody else's nature, and we shouldn't put ourselves or others in a position that might end up in irritating both. We must not confuse equality with sameness. Being equal means dignity as being God's creations, but at the same time we may be different than others, and we must be sensitive to that also. Have a wonderful Shabbos.